strong emotional health and mental fortitude help any team strive to be the best. We talked to an expert on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs. And if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
This episode is brought to you by LFS Chemistry. We are committed to being good stewards of the environment. We are providing the tools so you can be too. NAPE Expo, where deals happen. Air Compressor Solutions. When everything is on the line, Air Compressor Solutions is the dependable choice to keep commercial business powered up. Sandstone Group. Exec Crew. Elevate your network, elevate your knowledge. Texas Star Alliance. Pecos Country Operating. Fueling our future.
Well, hello again, and thank you as always for tuning in to another episode of The Crude Truth. We coming to you today from our South Lake studio. So shout out to everybody in South Lake. Hello. And wives, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a little while. And as always, today I've got my great co-host, Kristy. Kristy, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
Doing well. Staying busy. What about you?
Same.
Yeah? It's been a roller coaster.
It has been.
I don't know how you do it. You have been just moving and going all the time. I like that. Whatever energy you got, you need to just bottle up and sell it.
That's what everybody said. Somebody's asked me to send it over to them in England today. I'm like, here it goes. It's over there.
Well, I'm so excited because today we've got a guest that is just rocking and rolling in the coaching scene. You know way more about that than I do. And our guest today is somebody that is a local rock star, technically. He's been just blazing a trail for over 20 years. I don't know how he's been able to do it. Our guest today is Josh Morris. Josh, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I know it was a long trek for you to come over to South
Yeah,
Lake.
quite a trek.
But no, you have been somebody in this area for really over 20 years, as I introduce you. And you've been somebody that people, they know who you are. So thank you so much for coming on to my show. But also thank you for setting an example the way that you've been able to for so long, man. I can't imagine. I mean, for those of y'all that don't know Josh, can people, learn a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I originally got my degree in film and video production. My dad is a pastor, and so he asked me to start helping him do video production for the church. Then I guess the way like family businesses go, you just start morphing into different things. And so then I started pastoring. My brother's a pastor. My sister and her husband planted a church in Houston. And so I just sort of fell into pastoring and did that for quite a few years. But my favorite part of pastoring was really being able to build connections, relationship with people, doing a lot of biblical counseling, things like that. So we would work in inner healing and different things like that. And so that was sort of always an area of interest for me. And so that progressed into a natural progression of going into coaching after that.
Okay. And, what was it about the coaching on the biblical side that really just thought it was something to really do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, part of coaching, and this, Kristy, is it's a little bit of an art form, and you can go and you can get certified and do different things like that, which I've done. But it's a little bit of an art form, and it requires a lot of curiosity. And I've just always loved that part of it. I loved being part of the greater details of people's lives. I love one-on-one ministry. So I, am more known for preaching, but always from that, it leads to being able to really get involved in the details of people's lives. And that's where I really thrive and what I love to do.
Okay, very cool.
I heard you mention inner healing. Can you tap into that a little bit?
Yeah. So at the church, what we would do is we would, basically you could come in, you could get some biblical counseling, and some of that would be very practical advice and things like that. And I fully believe in counseling, go to counseling myself, and there's a lot of value to that. But you can bring it into a biblical and church perspective as well, where a lot of times what we would do is take people to whatever traumatic event had happened in their lives and ask some curious questions around that, because oftentimes whenever we're in those really traumatic situations, sort of the question we start to ask is, God, where were you in this? And so we sort of take them back to that moment of trauma and ask the Holy Spirit to really reveal to them, where was God in this? And I was just amazed, because this is a pretty simple process overall. And it just seemed like 100% of the time, as the Lord started to speak to them, they would say, He was right there with me. And when we feel abandoned by Him, if we really go back and we pay attention, He hurts with us. Whenever we do it to the least of these, we're doing it as unto Him. And so He cares deeply for the hurts, the pains that we've experienced. And for them to just sort of reframe where God was in those difficult times seems to be really helpful.
Do you technically call it like healing inner child? That's what I call it.
Yes,
Obviously,
yeah, very much so.
And
Yeah.
is there ways that you go in and help them understand and get rid of that and kind of reenact that and heal them?
Yeah. And so through the church perspective, we always had to have really clear lines between, like we, a lot of people that were licensed counselors, LPCs, would have to set aside because they're training, in some ways, because the state sort of controls what they're able to do and things like that, So we did not get into a very clinical or therapeutic level. So it involved a lot of prayer, a lot of really seeking God's voice in this. And so it was sort of, in some ways, a meditative process where it's like, let's allow yourself to kind of go back to that place where the pain and the trauma was experienced, and get curious with it, and really, find some healing in that. Studies have shown that trauma tends to separate into different areas of our brain.
Okay.
And so when we can actually tell the story, which is really difficult, we often, after experiencing difficult trauma, don't ever want to bring that up again or talk about it. And when we can tell the story and it's told to an empathetic voice that helps us tell a better version of that story, that brings healing to that traumatic event. It sort of reintegrates it into our brain. And obviously the effects of trauma are great. So when you can do that, without entering too much into the therapeutic space, but to allow people to be able to tell that story and create a new narrative around it.
Do you also help with emotions and letting your coaching clients know that emotions are valid, but they're not necessarily true?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you attack that?
Yeah. So we did not deal with that in pastoral ministry as much, but
Okay.
I deal with it all the time in coaching. So actually our specific focus is on building emotional intelligence. And so, there's been kind of a push to remove emotions from the workplace, because it clouds decisions and different things like that. And so we want to just completely remove emotions. But there's been some studies done recently that say that actually the final word on any decision that you ever make, it passes lastly through your emotions. So you can weigh the pros and cons all you want, but the logical side of your brain and the emotional side of your brain need to be in tune with each other. Traumatic events can sort of put a wall between those two areas of our brain. But there's just been a focus in the workplace to keep emotions out of that. And it's sort of because we're afraid of unregulated emotions,
Sure. Right.
which isn't good for the workplace at all.
No.
But you're lacking emotional intelligence if your emotions are unregulated. You're also lacking it if they're not accessible to you in any way. So we're trying to bring those two things together.
Like
to where they
emotional
work.
maturity,
Mhm,
basically.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very, very amazing.
Wow.
You're teaching that.
Yeah, I mean, that's that emotional part is really interesting to also hear, because I definitely think, okay, emotion, the work, but you cut it off, and
Yeah.
so that's real interesting and very, very positive to hear that. Hey, there's a fine line between that, and with your coaching, and that's why I asked you to come on, because you've just launched a brand new company, and I say just, but in the last several months, you've launched a new
Yeah,
company.
but about a year and a half we've been
Yes.
going.
And can you talk about that? What's the name of it, and go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So the name is a little bit weird and it requires some explaining. So the name of the company is Tov Co. And so with my biblical background and things like that, the Hebrew word for good is Tov. So the translation of Tov Company is good company, basically. And I got really interested in it because the whole goal was that we would not be isolated as leaders, which we see often. Leaders get very isolated And that's when we start to make poor decisions. So good company is kind of the idea I had around just bringing people together, taking away some of that isolation. And so, when you read in the Hebrew scriptures, you see the word tov all over the place. When God created the world, he called it good. He called it tov. But what I was fascinated by is I saw this word lo tov, and that means not good. And so I searched for every time in the Hebrew scriptures that lo tov was used, and it was only used 2 times. The first one is when God tells Adam that it's not good for him to live alone. And the second one is when Jethro tells Moses that it's not good for him to lead alone. So the only 2 times that not good is used in the Hebrew scriptures is when people are in isolation. And so that kind of pulled it all together for me to be able to call it Tov Co. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is get people back into good community. And especially after COVID, people really lost that connection with people. And so that's a huge component of what we do.
Well, you talk about the community aspect of this. You're bringing business leaders together, and so are you like going, all right, hey, you guys, our girls, like it's 2024, y'all are doing y'all's thing, but hey, this is a community. Are you asking them to be like, hey, who's in your circle within this community?
Yeah. So what we do is it's quite a big commitment for people that do it, but it's 10 people at a time. So I currently have 3 groups that are going, and we meet once a month all day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on a Friday. And so those 10 people will vary widely in what they do, from business owners to C-suite executives to stay-at-home moms to retired men and women who just want to understand themselves better and lead their families or their businesses better. And so 10 people, and they know someone in the group, but hopefully not very well. I have multiple husband and wife combinations in the group, but they can't be in the same group. They need to be separated from that. Okay. And so that's where we're bringing those groups together. They meet all day. It's a 1-year commitment, once a month, to meet all day. And so it's great too, because all those people are in different industries and stages of life. And so as they speak into each other's life, you're really learning and growing in that area. That's a really big component for us. Is I teach some things about emotional intelligence, but a lot of it is you bring what's heaviest on your mind, and it's not just me that's going to respond, it's the other people in the group. Because often when you tell someone a difficult thing that's going on in your life, I call it, you should do this, or you ought to do this, and they're just trying to solve your problem for you. But that doesn't attune to the emotions that you're feeling, and it's not very helpful,
Not at all.
So as they respond to the other people in the group, they're really learning to sense and feel and connect to those emotions and to act as a container for them. And so that's part of the program.
Are you teaching, basically, to me, that's communication. So if you're telling me a story and I'm going to listen to your traumatic or whatever you're going through, I'm going to validate you. Obviously,
Yes.
It doesn't have to be true to me, but I'm validating that for you. And then basically you're asking questions. How can you make it better, in a sense, or help with the process of healing this emotion or trauma or whatever they're going through? Are you teaching that in your group?
Yeah. And even so, that's a lot of the lessons will be about things like that. But then also I'll help coach people. So when they respond, sometimes also our temptation is we want to relate to them. So you tell your story and then they go, same thing happened to me, and they go into a 10-minute dialogue about their story. So I'll help coach them on how you really just miss them. I mean, they're pouring out their heart to you, and you really just told them that I'm not very interested in what you're saying.
Exactly. Because once they tell the story, it's just, you have to be quiet basically and listen and validate them. And that makes them feel important. And that's what actually helps them heal. The process is being heard, because people are not heard anymore at all, and are acknowledged, are validated.
That's exactly
That's amazing.
Often when anybody's talking, we're just thinking about what we're going to say next,
Right.
and then you could, 5 minutes later, you could say, what did they say? And I don't know, I've lost it completely, so listening is a huge component.
Huge. And they say that wait 20 seconds before you respond, basically, so that gives the person a little bit more time to explain if they need to.
Yes.
Very good. I like it that you're teaching that. We're lacking that these days.
Yes, for real.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge deficit.
It's terrible, because I know my communication is not the best, and I've said that before. And ask Kristy,
Sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
It's not. But so I love what you're saying, because I feel like I've always thought that replay, like saying, "Oh, that happened to me," like I think of it like, "Oh, that happened to me too, bro," and it's like, so I've not ever really responded because like you're trying to one up. It's almost like you're also trying to. So it's like in those scenarios, I know I just need to be better at just listening because I won't try to one up people or try to share to say that because also I think it's a form of trying to in some scenarios maybe like, oh well, I did that too or something, and but that's not really it. So it's kind of hard, I think, especially for me to be there, especially if somebody wants to get emotional. Like I know empathy for me is not the best. And, so I'm trying a lot more to like put myself in somebody's shoes. And like, for an example, I had a buddy of mine, his dad died. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I think I basically bolted. I was like, okay, I hung out with him and then I left and it's like, man, I didn't know it. And so, I was like, I did not know how to handle that. And then it's like, well, so because I thought about it, I was like, I'd be a wreck. Like, I don't know if I'd want to be around anybody. So those are the types of things that you're teaching there. And then with all you got so many different people with life lessons that can give a different point of view from a different perspective. Yeah.
A sort of a mental picture of what it looks like when someone's feeling down and emotional would be that normally I can see this person standing on 2 feet, able to walk around, to do activities and things like that. That's how we are typically in our emotions as we're living through our lives, but difficult things will happen. The mental image of that is that they're sitting on the ground. And often our temptation is to say, I want to pick you up off the ground because I really don't feel okay unless you're okay. And the key to attuning to their emotions is to see that they're in need and really sit on the ground, put your arm around them and say, I'm sitting here with you. I'm in this with you, And so that's a big part of that. And really the easiest thing to do without trying to think of, I've got to think of the perfect thing to say, is just come to that conversation with intense curiosity. So I like to go straight to, how did that make you feel? If you listen to people's language all day long, we say, I think this, I think this, I think this, but you don't hear very often, I feel this. And we have a really difficult time explaining what it is that we're feeling, putting a name to it. Even with our kids, we have a feelings chart because, kids really haven't developed the capacity to know exactly what it is that they're feeling. And so we hand them the feelings chart and say, circle the ones that you're feeling right now. So just any kind of tool that you can get people to start identifying the feelings that they're feeling. And when someone's going through something difficult and you go, I'm so ill-equipped to handle this, I just attack it with intense curiosity. Tell me more. How does that make you feel? What's going on inside of you?
Because you'll probably see the layers go down and the wall go down as well once they're starting to be heard. It's like I say go to their level, and that's what you're doing. You're going to their level, they're down, and then once you start acknowledging it, that layers come down, and then you guys rise up together, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is it with men? Obviously, men are fixers, and teaching that in your classes. How does that kind of happen with your teaching? Because most men, not most men, all men want to fix and not listen. And do you really tap into that as well? Because I think that's very powerful for not only marriages and relationships, but also a business aspect.
For sure.
Okay.
We've seen we really some pick it up quicker than others, and some it takes a while. But we've seen a lot of growth in that. Some of my clients have said, people at work have told me that I'm a different person, that now I went from who I was before to now being the safest person in the office for people to come talk to. And it's just that, we really, when we're trying to emote and tell people what we're going through, we really aren't asking them for counsel or advice on how to get through it. Oftentimes we even know the answer. It's the emotions that we're feeling that we're not quite sure how to process. And so we work a lot on that. And it happens a lot because when someone shares in the group, some of the guys especially will go straight to, let's fix that. Let's take care of that. Have you talked to so-and-so or whatever? And I just get to be like, hold on, wait a second. We have not felt these feelings with them. Let's slow down, let's be in this moment. And there will come a time for that. But first they need to know that we care about them,
I have one more question, obviously, about men. Men are, biblically the leaders. And are also helping with that. We hear the terms masculine, feminine, and all that. It all means the same basically, but helping men lead, be the driver of the bus. So that comes to business, not only that, families, and leave a legacy for your family. Like, what are you leaving a legacy for? Do you teach that as well in the...
Yeah. And really, even some of these practices really can change that atmosphere of leadership. I had a client who had a estranged relationship with his adult daughter, and through different traumatic events that had taken place over their life, there was just very little communication, if at all. And so one of the things that we'll do is, if someone's about to have a really difficult conversation, we will in some ways sort of act it out. So, I have to have a difficult conversation. I'm going to sit in this chair, and then I put somebody in that chair, and your logical mind knows you're not actually talking to that person, but your emotions don't know that. And so they'll just actually have that conversation, and then we can coach them through, like, yeah, actually you got really defensive there and didn't really listen to what her needs were, and that has helped immensely for guys to be able to experience then when they go home and have that conversation with their wife or their kids, they're much more prepared to be able to lead them.
Yes, that's I do that a lot with healing as well. Just close your eyes and imagine, or let's role play in a sense, as this is how it's, and then you're teaching everything.
Yeah,
that's powerful.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, it's been really effective.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What is one of the things, and I'm not looking for like real big details, but what's one of the proudest moments you've had so far in this journey, doing the coaching and spreading the word the way you have?
Yeah, I think I have a million amazing stories now with clients that are seeing great progress in different things. But for having just started, a little over a year ago, the groups, they join in for 1 year time. And so I stepped into this, and, that group is about 50-50 male and female, and jumped in there and decided to do this group model, because I feel like we do heal in community. I still do individual sessions with people, but I really love that aspect of the group coming together. So we just came to the time for the year to end, and 100% of them renewed to go for another year. And that's, just not very common in this. And so I think that was a really big win to show that, like, these were people who were like very resistant, knew they needed to get into something and have some change. Not everyone was resistant, but quite a few of them were just like, I am terrified. I remember that first day that we got to group, and they're like, I just don't want to do this, and I don't want to open up, and I don't want you to see what's going on in my life, Yeah. And so to get a year down the road and every single one of them go, this is my community, and I want to keep going with this. That was probably the biggest win overall, because lots of individual stories, but when 10 people go, hey, I'm loving this, and it's changing my life, and I want to keep being a part of this. That's an amazing thing to feel.
That's really cool. Congratulations on that. And are you looking to even add more groups, or are you going to try to just stick with 3 groups?
So 3 here locally is kind of where we'll always be. We're developing one in Colorado Springs right now, so I'd like to start taking them regionally. Yeah. Because I do have clients. It's difficult for them. I have a client that flies in from Atlanta, a client that flies in from San Diego for just to be in person in the groups. Probably the most difficult one is I have a client that flies in from St. Croix. So it's 2 flights and a day of traveling to get there for the group session.
That's dedication.
So, that's dedication. Yeah. And it just shows how impactful I think that is.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I mean, if you could just replicate yourself and put yourself in other states and countries, that would be amazing.
Golly, that's almost like when you climb the mountain to go speak. I mean, that's pretty crazy. That's dedication and impact that you're making.
It's I those are absolute. I mean, not just the ones that travel, but the ones that do go into it saying, I am committed to this process and dedicated to it. Yeah. And so the requirement is much greater on them to be able to plan their trip, get their flights, and make it there on time. So they come to that group with a lot of commitment and wanting to get the most out of their investment. Yeah. And that puts them in the right frame of mind to really see good results.
Yeah.
They're wanting the change. And so they're dedicated to, they significantly want to change, and they obviously are guiding them. So that's powerful.
as an entrepreneur, because this is, I'll say it like this, you've broken away from the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is one thing that is definitely different bringing an entrepreneur on your own in this journey as well? Because it is a business, correct?
Right.
So what is one thing about just being an entrepreneur in this whole level of coaching?
Yeah, I mean, so a practical part of it is that at the church I was working at, it's a really large church. So if my computer's acting up, there's a whole IT department right there. We got a marketing department, and so that's probably been the biggest thing is, starting off, I'm the marketing person, I'm the IT person, I'm signing contracts and sending invoices and things like that, and all I really want to do is do the work with people, and so that's definitely been the hardest part, learning the tax code and how I need to structure everything and all that stuff, that's definitely been the most difficult part. But there's also another aspect to after doing that for 20 years that I've really had to people still see me as a pastor. And so even some people in my groups, they'll go, Pastor Josh, and I'm like, stop, I've gone into something different now, and so, it's hard after that long of a period of time to really rebrand yourself for what you're doing now.
Of course.
All I can think about is that silly movie. Well, it's not silly, but the movie Signs, where Mel Gibson was a preacher that he walked away, but everybody still kept coming up to him and go, hey, preacher, I need to talk to you. I'm not doing that anymore. But I guess, once I think when somebody wants to talk to you about God, I think you got to stop and at least listen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Do you put your pastor hat on when they? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a pastor hat and then like your coaching hat? I mean, how? Because in some ways, I would see that a pastor is a coach, right?
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So is there a time for one or the other?
Not really. I think the only time that does take place is, when I go to travel and preach at churches, I've got to really put that pastor hat back on, but I see my coaching business as still pastoring. And in some ways, I feel like I'm pastoring even more because working for such a large church, you're also running the business of the church and you're paying attention to your teams and leading your teams and different things like that. And so now it's, all my focus is just on the clients themselves. Right. And so, especially for the people who are in groups, and then I go into businesses and do staff development training and leadership management training, things like that. But especially for the people in the groups, I really consider myself to sort of be on retainer with them. So a lot of it will be a quick call. I'm running into some meeting and I'm just not sure how to handle this, and so I get to just really be involved in that much detail of their lives. And I absolutely love that part of it.
Do you bring a lot of the biblical into your coaching, or do you separate that?
Yeah, so far I've been blessed to have, when I go into businesses, I ask the business owner, what do you prefer? Most of the business owners are Christians, but maybe not, trying to bring that into those staff meetings or things like that. But in the group so far, 100% of my clients have all been believers. And that's been amazing because in my lessons, I can show biblical examples of those types of things.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what if somebody was not a believer and they wanted to come in? Would you adjust to that or just kind of incorporate that as well?
I think more of it would be a conversation beforehand to say, just so you know, even though you're not a believer, I think there's a ton of wisdom to be found in the Bible. You're going to hear this quoted multiple times. And I don't think it should, if it's a problem for you, you definitely don't have to join the group. But I think even as an unbeliever, there's a lot of wisdom that you can pull from these verses.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's actually
because you're kind of saving people at the same time and tapping into. Love it.
And then I almost feel like with you being so, detailed in all these individuals' lives, you really are just continuing to spread the word in a positive to where then those guys are then, that trickle down effect where then everybody's just continuing to grow spiritually. And God knows, I mean, literally we need that more than ever right now. It's crazy out there, right? I mean, it's just something that we're seeing out there, and it's almost an upside down world. So, I mean,
once they put the effort in, they become the testament to getting this kind of help. And that has been amazing because, I have, multiple spouses that are both in groups and separate groups. And that has taken place every time because they go, I thought this was just for my spouse. I thought this was just for my husband. But once I saw the change that was happening in him, I just knew I had to be a part, And so they become little beacons of light everywhere they go, that's showing what the real benefits are of investing in yourself in this way.
Wow, that's real cool. That's real. Another thing I wanted to kind of just ask you about is that when you're with these business leaders, are these, how is everybody checking their egos at the door? What are you doing for that?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Those egos.
They are there for sure. I learned a lot. I went to a intensive counseling retreat at a place called Onsite in San Diego, and they have one in Nashville as well. And so because of its proximity to Hollywood and being in the music industry, when you're there, it's first name only, which, when you're in a group of 10 people, obviously we know each other's last names, and we're all on a text thread together, kind of communicating throughout the week and different things like that. But I learned a lot about how to explain to people that, like, we want to check that at the door, and we want to be able to walk in here. This isn't about how much you've accomplished, what kind of revenue your business is doing, and really be able to kind of illustrate how off-putting and difficult it is to connect with people after sort of projecting that image. And so that's what we really want, is that we're a very mixed group of people in here. So let's just be people that are in community together.
And we need community more than ever right now. I mean, well, I'm sorry. I don't think I was doing it right at all. I just keep going like this.
Trying to stay on that microphone.
For everybody that's just listening, the producer told me to move my head when I talk on this microphone, but I'm not doing it very well. I think I say it like that, I go again. But no, I mean, community is something that I think has been, I'll kind of go off, infiltrated in a negative way, that it's broken up the community. Mm-hmm. And I think, when you look at it, the community, if the community is strong, then kind of like with your groups, it only continues to get bigger from there. Yeah. And so then that spreads everything, and just, you start with that foundation of the community, and then the next level gets stronger and stronger just because how strong your community is. That something you think that could work?
Yeah. I love that they're leaving and going and making an impact in places. But business-wise, the side benefit for me is when I first started, I was trying to market all the time and pursue leads and things like that. And now they just have people in their lives going, "What's different with you?" And they get to go, "Well, I'm doing this thing," and then people just show up. So that's been really nice. It relieves some of the burden of trying to get your word out there and market all the time.
That's what I like to say, be the change.
Yeah.
Because once you're the change, everybody's going to ask you, what are you doing differently? What is this? And what you can just share it with them.
That is exactly right.
Be the change.
Be the change. I like that one.
I love that.
You must be a coach too.
Maybe.
Well, how can people find you out there, Josh? Like, people that want to be the change, because what it sounds like is you're taking leaders and you're even elevating them even higher. So how can people find you?
Yeah. If you're interested in getting involved, we do go to businesses and do leadership training, management, things like that. The groups right now here are local, but we're expanding to regional places soon. And then our individual sessions are done on Zoom, so they're easy to book right from the website. I've got multiple coaches on the team, so you can pick someone that read their bio, pick someone that suits your needs. So the easiest place to do that is Tov Co. So it's TOV.co. And that's our website. And there's forms on there where you can contact us. There's links directly to each coach where you can book sessions with them. And so that's the best place to connect there.
And so you have like more coaches and things like that. Do they have their own groups as well, or?
Yeah, some of them are starting to get into starting some groups. So right now they're all just doing individual sessions, but we would love to be able to see the groups grow. And so all the coaches that are with me are also a participant in one of my groups. So they're really learning the way that I've structured the groups, and soon we'll then be able to start their own.
Oh, very
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's good. Trying to replicate the model as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Dang, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, man. I mean, again, it just sounds like what you're doing is really making it a change, and these individuals are being that change, because again, word of mouth is always the most powerful.
Sure.
And if these guys are walking around, people like, there's something different about you. And so that's really cool. Tov Co.
Yep. Tov Co.
I love that.
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
we also have real quick we have a 501c3 that we just started recently. And so the website has to be different for that than our for-profit business, but that's just tovco.org. And we're being able now to take the content and the things that we're doing to guys and gals that are reentering into society after prison, and then also to missionaries across the world and single parents. And so that's a great way to be able to take this content to some of the people that really need it the most. And so that's just getting going. So if you want to know more information about the foundation, our not-for-profit part of that, that's at tovco.org.
So like, are y'all trying to get groups for at the prisons or out the people that just came out?
Yeah. So since we're I'm a part of Gateway Church, and there's a ministry. Gateway Church has prison campuses all over. I think I could be wrong. I think there's 11 prison campuses, and so I partnered with a ministry called Driven Reentry. And what they do is the guys that they have vetted that have been a part of these campuses while they're in prison, when they come out, they can move into a house. There's 10 guys in each house, and they'll have a place to stay. Eventually, they get help starting to find a job, get their driver's license back. Then they start paying small amounts of rent. So it's a 3-phase process to get them up on their feet and reentering back into society. And so in that sense, they've already been a part of the church. And, when they come out and they enter into the house, they still know that there's going to be accountability. There's regular drug testing, they've got to be going to their AA meetings and stay a part of the church and things like that. But it gives them an opportunity to really get their feet under them and get back into society. And we even help some of them if they're, finding employment is always, pretty difficult. So Scott Graham, the guy that started the ministry, he has a couple businesses, so he can hire some of them. But he's formerly incarcerated, so he also teaches them how to start a business if they want to. So, it's difficult to find employment. So he's like, let's just bypass that and start a business right now.
Yeah.
That's why so many people actually go back into the system, is they don't have guidance onto how do I've served my time. Now I want to rebuild and, start a new life. So that's amazing and powerful that you guys do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think everything what you're doing out there is just spreading the word, and you're just being that positive, and you're being that change, Josh. And
why still my line?
It's a good line.
I'm planning to steal it too.
You're allowed to.
Yeah. I mean, that may be the tagline. Be the change.
Yeah.
We'll put her name. We'll put a little quote. Be the change. Mr. Kerns. There you go. On this episode, we had Josh. Be the change.
Just joking.
No, you are doing so many, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on. And the coaching aspect has really opened up my eyes. I mean, it's been one thing real fun. I'm trying because Kristy was actually, a guest on the show about the coaching, about life coaching. And because of that, now it's been really fun to not only talk to more individuals that are coaches, but also try to become maybe learn a little bit.
A product of my coaching skills.
So I just think it's so cool, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on this episode and being here today.
No, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, this was amazing. I loved hearing everything you had to say.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to look at your foundations for sure.
Thanks.
So, Josh Morris, do you want to say anything else before you leave? Just drop us with an awesome tad bit of info.
Be the change.
Yes.
I love it. Well, Josh, thank you so much. Kristy, I'm looking forward to more. I cannot thank you enough for being here.
Thank you.
And all our listeners and viewers out there, thank you as always. And we'll see you again on another episode of The Crude Truth.
Again, The Crude Truth would like to thank today's sponsors: LFS Chemistry, NAPE Expo, Air Compressor Solutions, Sandstone Group, Exec Crew, Texas Star Alliance, Pecos Country Operating, and Real News Communication Network.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-5700 888-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.